It's no secret that writing can be lonely work, but does it really have to be? Whether you're full-time, part-time, or just starting out, you'll get insights into the tricks, tips, and production habits of writers from every level of the biz. From best-selling authors to those launching their first novels, you're sure to be in the company of friends as we encourage great writers to divulge and share their secrets. This is the Great Writers Share podcast with your host, best-selling author, Daniel Wilcox.
Hello and welcome to the Great Writers Share podcast with me, Daniel Wilcox, where every week I sit down with writers from across all mediums and genres to dissect their brains and pluck out tips, tricks and strategies that you can use to boost your writing career. Today's date is Monday the 23rd of September. That was 23rd of September. And today my guest is LitRPG author and publisher Dakota KROUT. Dakota is someone who came into my field of view probably about 6-7 months ago now, while I was busy just looking into different genres of different books, and I dipped my toes into the LitRPG genre and just had a read of a couple of books and came across Dakota KROUT just through to the sheer volume of reviews and books that this guy's been putting out, and they're fantastic stuff, and I highly recommend them to anyone who's interested in finding out more about the genre, or people who are already reading the genre. Probably already know, but check out Dakota KROUT. And today we dive into a lot of stuff. So I talked to Dakota about things like how he managed to ride his wave of success from his first book being successful, and how he managed to capitalize on that and keep the wave going. How he moved from becoming a creative and turning into a publisher. So he now publishes other people's work under his company, Mountaindale Press. So we talk a lot about what that journey looked like and how he knew he was ready to take those steps. And one of the big ones that I wasn't expecting to be talking about was how to sort of maximize your time and make the most of every second of every day. And we go a little bit into about his journey and the beginning of what it took to actually get those first books written and how he managed to squeeze writing into the time that he had. So a lot of interesting stuff there. But before we get into the interview, just a quick shout out to the Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Great Writers Share. Without the support from everyone over at the Patreon page, I wouldn't be able to do this show. It helps fund all the behind the scenes. It helps sort of just keeps the lights on and all the gears whirring. So thank you to all my patrons over there. We don't have any new patrons this week, but for anyone who wants to go over and join and check out what's going on over there for as little as $1 a month, you can join up to patreon.com/Great Writers Share and support the show and get a load of extra bonus goodies. And I think I've prattled on about enough of that in every intro so far. So if you are interested, just check it out, and I'll put a link in the show notes. The one thing that I will say is just a reminder that this month's giveaway for anyone who is a patron is a copy of Monica Leonel's Write Better, Faster, How to Triple Your Writing Speed and Write More Every Day. And definitely something if you want to capitalize on the momentum you have, on any time that you have in order to get the words down. It's definitely a book that's worth reading. But I'll keep this one short. I'm not gonna mumble for too much, so I'm just gonna jump straight into the interview with the ever impressive Dakota KROUT. Enjoy. Dakota KROUT is a well-deserved king of LitRPG fiction. He has amassed literally thousands of 5-star reviews across his collective titles, and his latest release, Raise, part of the Completionist Chronicles, made it to number 14 in the Amazon charts in July of 2019. Following his independent success, Dakota is now also the owner of Mountaindale Press, an independent publishing company specializing in fantasy and sci-fi fiction, and a highly sought-after public speaker in the independent author circuit. Dakota, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. It's amazing to be here. Thank you.
I'm excited to have you. So a bit of background just for people so they know, and it's probably something they've come to expect from some of my previous guests, as I've had a lot of people that I met in Edinburgh on the show itself. So
awesome.
Met at the 20 Books Conference in Edinburgh.
Did, yes.
But I'd actually read the first couple of your Completionist Chronicles books before I met you. And
thanks, man.
I know, it's always nice meeting someone when you're actually familiar with their work rather than the whole, I'll have to read you sometime, which is always a bit awkward. But we kind of spoke a lot about different things over that weekend. And I think one of the places I wanted to start this interview was just literally going back to the beginning of your writing journey. Tell us how you got into writing to start with, and sort of how you got to where you are now in as sort of brief, a compact thing as you can.
Sure. Absolutely, man. So I started writing while I was in college, or university, I think I guess call it over there. And the for me, what I was doing was there's a thing in my college where if you take more than 12 credits a semester, you only pay for 12 credits per that semester, right? So because that's considered full-time student. So I was taking 22 credits because I said, hey, if I'm going to take advantage and not have to pay for all this extra time, let's really go for it. So I was going very hard at my courses, and then I had my jobs and my internships at the same time. And my senior year, all of a sudden I dropped down to 6 credits because that's all I had left. Like there was no other courses for me to take in my degree program. And so I took a creative writing course, and I was told in no uncertain terms, no one will ever read anything you write. so I said, all right, well, I guess we'll see, won't we? So then I hopped on writing, and I had these big chunks of time that I was not used to having. And I just said, I could play games, I could watch shows, I could do all these other things. But I just started writing, and I just fell in love with it. Absolutely, man. And from there, my first series took off, which was awesome, like this, the Divine Dungeon series. And that took off. And as soon as I saw that was going well, I immediately jumped into learning more about writing as a craft and marketing as a business. And both of them are very intense, and both of them are very rewarding, and it's amazing. So yeah,
fantastic
origin story there.
Yeah, it's kind of I don't know, it's crazy. So 22 credits, you're taking 22 different things above what is expected. Right. How did you manage to fit that all into your time?
So I was in the military for 8 years, and I was very used to short nights of sleep. So a lot of people will just do the thing, but I was just so used to going all day every day. In the military, in the Army specifically, there's a thing called AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training. And that is, you are in classes from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. and you are taking courses the whole time. You have a lunch break, and that's it, right? And so that's what I was used to, like back even like at the start of my career in the military. And so then, just all those long days, 18-hour, 20-hour days. In the Army, I got out, I went into the reserves, and I went straight to college. And so I was just in the mindset of 100% devotion to whatever you're doing. And so that's really how I powered through. And there wasn't 22 classes a semester. That was like, there's a lot of courses that are like 4 credits. So if you take 3 of these big courses at a time, that's, a full-time student. So I was taking, 4 or 5 or 6 if they were smaller ones sometimes. Yeah.
Gotcha. So before you got into the military, did you have that mindset already, or was that definitely something that the military specifically put into you?
That was definitely something that the military specifically put into me, because I joined the military to, for me it was to get out of the very small town I was living in, find my own way in the world, sort of thing. And I went in as a computer guy into the military, so. I had 100% devotion, so I worked on satellites, radios, computers, all sorts of the fun stuff. And yeah, I mean, it was 100% learning the whole time for like 8 years solid. And so then for me there, it wasn't so difficult to jump from learning in that capacity to learning in college, and then straight from there into devoting a ton of time to researching, writing, how to write better, how to do marketing. And then luckily my wife took over and did marketing far better than I could ever hope to do. So
see, that's that must be the component that I was missing, because I went to university, and in the hours when I had literally nothing to do, I did do the gaming side of it. So it was only sort of years later, after I got into the world of work and everything else, and suddenly when I want to write, that I then learned. But I mean, gaming does feature obviously quite heavily into the genre that you write in.
Yes.
And did you game at all in that period? Is that still something that you balance with the writing itself?
Oh, totally. So I mean, I'm a huge nerd, man. Like, absolutely. So what was big for me was so in college, luckily I had a bunch of friends who were big into like Dungeons and Dragons and like tabletop RPGs. And so I got really familiar with using, stat sheets and stuff like that, and figuring out the best ways to use the rules to your advantage, that, the things that you do in video games, right? And then, of course, I was a huge fan of like Elder Scrolls Skyrim. That I still play that. It's been years now since that came out.
So
good. I'm still finding new quests, man. It's craziness. And yeah, I mean, and that's sort of what I'm going for, is like being able to look at a world like that for years and be like, man, this is so interesting and immersive, and I can go anywhere and do anything, and I'm still finding new content, and like, that's what I'm really hoping to do with my books, is kind of get that same feel. Obviously, in a book, it's much more finite and it's one person writing, so, but still, it's pretty awesome. And, something that was a passion for me a long time ago turns into my current passion, which is writing about video game style things, which is pretty fun.
It's like playing D&D by yourself.
Kind of, yeah. But if you're the dungeon master and all the characters and you're writing it all down, it's called writing a book.
Yeah. Yeah. So there might be a couple of listeners who aren't quite sure what LitRPG fiction is. Are you okay just to give a brief overview of what that genre is? Because it's still quite a young genre in itself.
It is, yes. It's only a few years old, and in general terms. Yes. So how I describe it best, I think, is epic fantasy with a sci-fi twist, right? So these are novels, like these are books. They're series. They're not video games. Like some people are like, oh, so you write video games? No. What we write are books that have characters and abilities and skills and spells that have all been gamified. So if you're able to like hold out your hand, suddenly a fireball, right? You have a skill level in holding a fireball, or your hand glows. See that? Like, there we go. Like, activate
Literally,
my hand glow.
for people who can't see the video feed, that was a ray of sunshine hitting Dakota's hand.
Yeah, so like you're like, okay, activate glow, right? So a level 1. Now I have a level 1 skill in glow hand or something like that, right? And as I use it more, as I find the limits of that, and as I test new parts of that, like that, the skill ranks up. So it can, like skill rank 2, both hands suddenly are shiny. And that sort of thing, all the way up till like skill level 100, where you can like dazzle people completely with your brilliant white hands, right? Now, this is just me not getting any sun. But I mean, that's kind of how it is every aspect of something or someone is quantified. So your physicality, your mentality, your luck, like everything is put into a way that both the reader and the writer know the rules very well, and they can follow them and understand them and know kind of what the limits are. And that makes for really fun storytelling. So, yeah.
And was it a genre that you were already aware of that you then jumped into, or was it sort of quite fortuitous in that this was something you loved, this was something you started writing, and the two kind of mixed hand in hand?
That one, by far. I didn't know the genre existed until I was told, hey, you write our genre, come hang out with us. And I was like, oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, let's do that. So yeah, I jumped in, and then now I try to keep up with everything else that's being written in the genre, but there's, it's moving pretty quick now. But I mean, there's a lot of incredibly talented authors in the groups, and there's nothing like seeing a lot of people loving to do what you're doing. It's a very cool feeling.
We've spoken a lot about, we're quite passionate about, obviously you love this genre. It's definitely something that's ingrained quite deeply into you. It takes all the things you've always loved. And I was actually listening to a podcast that you did last year on the LitRPG Fiction podcast. I forget the host name. I'll add it into the show notes. I feel bad for that. But yes, that was the one. Yes. And one of the things you said in that was you feel very fortunate that you are writing the things that you absolutely enjoy, that you still love. Is that still the case now that you're sort of moving more into a publisher realm? Because obviously you're still balancing creation with publishing. But has that in any way changed at all, or is that sort of still there?
I mean, it's changed how it is, but it just kind of deepens, how much I enjoy it, because, what I write and what I publish are similar. And then, hang on one second. So it just popped into a Discord with me. And I'm on a talk with Dan Wilcox, so I'm going to close out a Discord.
Always working.
Right. So Sorry about that. Yeah, so it's kind of really opened my eyes to how much more of the genre there is. Like we have an author that author that I really like, who's writing skeletons that are in space, right? So it's more science fiction than fantasy, but then it's just science fiction with a fantasy twist instead of what I write, which is fantasy with a science fiction twist, right? And then yeah, I mean, it's very cool. So all over the place, I'm learning new things about my own genre, and that's something that's awesome. So as a publisher, it's a really cool feeling.
Oh yeah, we're definitely going to dig into Mountaindale Press, but I'm just going to jump back a little bit because I'm massively curious about. You said so your first series, the Divine Dungeon series, was a bit of it happened. It just took off. It did exactly what you had hoped it would do.
Yes.
How did you go about sort of scaling that, capitalizing on the momentum and keeping that moving? Because obviously when somebody does hit that gold mine, sometimes it's a case that you don't know what to do and that can easily be lost. But how did you sort of embrace that moment and keep it moving?
Sure. So I will say that beyond anything else, I was very shocked. I mean, I very much expected that my lovely wife and my mother would read my book, and then that would be the end of things. But as it happens, no. I mean, my mother still hasn't read it.
Like, come on, Mum, it's been 3 years.
No, seriously. No, she's fine. Not her genre. That's fine, right? No, it's not for everyone. She doesn't even like video games, so yeah.
Fair.
In terms of that, so all right, to clarify here, the question is, how did I jump on that momentum, correct?
Yes.
Like, how did I capitalize? Okay. So basically, I would say that I started very fortuitously. I got in and I was pulled into the genre, and there were people that reached out to me and they said, "You're writing in this, join these groups and come and we'll make sure people see it." I said, okay. And then basically I looked around at what else I saw in the genre, and it was still very young. There's very few people in there that were writing and putting out good quality content. And still, I think I'm one of maybe just a tiny handful of people that has a completed series in the genre right now, right? So what I saw was a lot of people putting out their first book and then vanishing forever. So I said, what is going to be the most important thing for me to do? And I said, and that's going to be to get out another book, right? So I immediately hopped on and I wrote 100,000 words in the next month. And I edited it in the next 2 weeks from there. And then I put it out, and that was Dungeon Madness. And that one was received really well as well. And so over the next, I think 2 months, because I took 2 months this time, I wrote another 120,000 words, and I put out, I think that one was Dungeon Calamity, right? So that was book 3. And I said, okay, well, now that I have 3 books out and they're doing well, how do I do this better, right? So my most important thing was get out that first trilogy, and then I said, okay, now what? And now what, as it turns out, is learn to do things better. And so I took time to go to conferences and talk to a lot of people, take courses. So I learned how to do marketing better. And even so, when my wife came in and took over the marketing, she kind of gently chuckled at my attempts at marketing, because it was cute, but in a very sweet way, but still, it was marketing that people weren't doing, right? So at the time, we were very much, sorry, I'm in a coffee shop, so there's a grinder going. But at the time, it was no one was really doing marketing in the genre, because we were very much in a bubble, right? It was a thing where people were putting up these books and seeing great results because there was nothing else in the genre, right? And so now, a couple years later, we have so much in there. We have so many people that that the marketing that we do and that we learned how to do before it was necessary is really, really helpful and beneficial to us. And yeah, so I would say the first for capitalization, how I capitalized was I saw that I was lucky, and I said, how do I make sure that I stay lucky, right? How do I make sure that this is something that continues more than a one-off? And so I said content and then learn how to do it, because you can always go back and fix, right? Like all of my books have been re-edited since then. All of my books have new covers since then. And yeah, I mean, you can't fix something that you don't have, right? And that's what I tell people when they get caught in editing spirals. And yeah, so production, and then learn how to do things after was kind of how it worked for me. So,
and what are your biggest marketing tips for particularly for the LitRPG genre, but sort of a bit more broad if you've got anything?
Sure. So in general, I mean, there are a ton of courses out there, right? I recommend Mark Dawson's Ads for Authors, because it helps you to pick where your marketing will be most effective. So depending on where you market, Amazon, Facebook, Google, Instagram, all these other places. Yeah, I mean, learn how to do it right, like, because there's basically 3 ways to do it. You either take the time, you put in the time and you do it yourself, you hire someone to do it, or basically you throw money and put someone through the course to do it, right? And it really depends on the resources you have at your disposal at that point. And for me and for my lovely wife at the time, we had the time, but definitely not the money. So, we learned how to do it ourselves. And yeah, I mean, we've been pushing and working to keep up with it, because it's a constantly shifting goalpost. And yeah, so it's an interesting experience. Yeah.
It's definitely the thing about just marketing in general is just it never stays the same for more than a month or so. There's always something new. A market's changing, something new comes out, and it's a whole big monster to hold on to.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Amazon has been definitely throwing twists in there every few months. So that's always fun.
But it's the king. Without Amazon, we'd all be dead.
It's true. or at least much hungrier than we are currently.
Oh, definitely.
As I drink my coffee.
That's cool. So jumping onto Mountaindale Press, mentioned it a couple of times. It's your publishing baby. You went from being just sporting the shirt. So how many copies of that shirt do you have?
Of this shirt?
Yes.
So this is actually the only T-shirt version of it I have. I have I think 5 polos, but it's just this symbol but tiny over here. And that's what I wear normally, but I biked in today, so I wanted to wear a T-shirt.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and it's really easy for me, because then I can know exactly what I'm going to wear day by day,
This is where I'm going to get to, because there's a whole thing, isn't there, about the reason certain CEOs and owners of companies wear the same clothes every day is just to remove that extra decision that they'd have to make and get one step away from decision fatigue. Is that something you particularly do, or is it just coincidental that you're wearing?
No, it is definitely that. Also, it's really easy for me to do laundry. I have like 10 articles of clothing total, man. I'm like, I got 5 sets of the same shorts I wear, 5 sets of the same shirts, and then I have my workout stuff and my T-shirts, right? So, and then every once in a while I'll be on panels and something, I'm the only one wearing shorts,
Yeah.
And people are like, man, that guy has some pasty white legs. I'm like, yeah, I do.
And they never get browner, although they're always out.
Always. It doesn't matter. Like, it's, where I lived, there's sun today, and it's a rare occurrence. So
no, it does look beautiful where you are at the minute.
Oh yeah, it's gorgeous right now, but it was like 38 degrees this morning. It's supposed to snow here next week.
Oh wow.
So, yeah. So it gets cold pretty early in the year.
Yeah. We're jumping back into so obviously you run Mountaindale Press now. It is your baby. Talk us through the sort of transition from going from writing by yourself, being an independent author, into deciding that you're ready to bring on other authors and publish them, because that's quite a big step to take, because it's not just yourself then, you're taking responsibility for other people.
Yes, it is, and it was as difficult as going full-time was, honestly. Like, and so for anyone who is just starting out with their own self-publishing stuff, I would say definitely, make yourself a nice solid foundation, because by the time my wife and I, Danielle, who's the CEO of the company, by the way, when we decided to actually start the company, we had a huge amount of marketing, research that we had done, and that's courses that's going on and seeing how things are going. It's making, spreadsheets and papers worth of data that we're collecting in various different things, everything from keywords to marketing, like tips, to like little things we hear off the street, or well, not the street, but like convention pathways, and so by then we had like probably $20,000 to $30,000 of stuff that we had done, if not in actual money invested, in the time invested, right? And I think that was the entirety of 2018, was just like learning how to have all this stuff, setting up contacts with narrators, setting contacts up with editors, artists, typesetters, developmental editors, line editors, copy editors. All of this, it's a huge undertaking. And then not only that, but then, like getting contracts, and because you can say, hey man, you want to work with me? Yeah, totally. Cool. Here's a piece of paper you have to sign. Oh, totally different ballgame. So, I mean, in that case, I would definitely tell people, if you're thinking about doing it, feel free to do it. Just start small. Like take on one person and see how difficult it is. Because it's not the same difficulty as just yourself publishing and someone else, because you know what you're doing, right? Like, you know exactly like what you're trying for when you're self-published author, right? You're like, hey, I'm gonna put out my book. I'm gonna hit publish. It's gonna be done, right? I have my cover. I have all this stuff, right? Cool. But when you have to work with someone else, they have to go through you for everything. So you need to have basically the infrastructure set up to support that. So if you're an author and you're like, man, I want to start a publishing company, just realize that that's half of your workday gone. So if you want to, like at a minimum, so if you want to write and just write, man. Just be a self-published author, or work. If you want to just write, if you just want to put out a book, find a publisher. Like find someone like an independent press. Find a smaller company. Traditional publishing is, I don't want to say terrible things, but because I don't have terrible things to say. It's just I don't have that experience of saying that. But from what I hear, and what I have seen with authors that do have that experience, is it's a much longer and more painful process to get things rolling. And yeah, so if you know what you want, and you just want to see it happen, then you probably want to be a self-published author. So yeah.
I think it's a very important point you sort of bring up there, particularly about independent publishers, because I think what I've particularly seen in the last 6 months, and that's sort of just going to conferences and seeing from different people, is there are a lot more independent publishers springing up, and
yes.
Some of them are obviously good, and some of them have like building a reputation, like yourself as one, obviously LMBPN, that we're sort of friends with and we know. And but then there are some that are sort of not as reputable and maybe are a bit too young in their journey to try that. But I think it's definitely changed a lot to be able to, as an independent creator, have those outlets, as well as having to, rather than having to just rely on yourself writing and doing all your marketing, there are ways to sort of collaborate with other people and make that an option to exist. And that's something that, like you say, you're offering to authors. How many authors have you currently got on board with Mountaindale?
So I have six authors that have published works with us. I think I have 12 authors total that are with the company, that are signed on. And so it's myself, my wife, and our she just got promoted. She's vice president of operations. She was our assistant. So yeah, so it's a 3-person company right now with all of these other support pieces going. So the authors, the editors, the narrators, all the way down, sound engineers, quality assurance, all this fun stuff is contracted on, and there's only 3 actual employees in Mountaindale, right? So our infrastructure is going to have to expand to expand further than we already have. But yeah, even with the amount of authors that we have now, it's a more than full-time job keeping up with everything by far. Yeah.
And then, like you say, you and your wife are working sort of side by side within Mountaindale itself. How do you manage that relationship? Is that something quite difficult? Have you had to sort of talk that one through?
We work in different rooms.
You work in coffee shops?
We actually sometimes if we're both in a coffee shop, we're good usually. So we just have very different work styles. Like I have So I say this: I have a split keyboard.
Oh wow, nice.
So when I am typing, I look like this. So I look like I'm just kind of jazz handing. That's why I'm just jazz handing over here, tap, tap, tap. So I have a standing desk at home in my office, and I'll be standing there and I'll have music blaring and I'll be tapping away. So I'm just like, yeah, this is awesome, man. This is great. And my wife is over there like studiously like focused and watching her thing, and she's got like calming piano music going, and it's like she looks over, she sees me like jazzing and like dancing around while I'm typing away. She's like, that guy is not working at all.
You're like, yes, I am.
Right. And so, but for me, sitting and studiously focusing, heads down, tapping away isn't a thing I can do as well as, like I could when I was a programmer, right? Because this writing is all about the creativity and the making the fun and finding the escapism from that environment. And so the two of us have to have different working environments typically. But other than that, we try to leave business as business and family as family. So there's a lot of crossover, but it's pretty awesome.
And how do you manage your time now? Because like you said earlier, your time spent in creativity does reduce when you take on other people. I mean, without sort of sidetracking too much into mine, I became a manager of a department a couple of years ago. I've since left that job, but definitely one of the biggest things I found in that transition from employee to a manager of a team was that the amount of work you can do yourself is just, I mean, it's 40%, 50% tops of what it was. So
right.
What does a typical sort of working day look like for you?
Absolutely. So I have one of my authors here, Andres Leus. Hi, buddy. And so what I do, I try to have office hours. So most of the time, what I do is I get up and I start my day and I'm writing, right? And most of my morning, especially, is typically focused on my writing. And then I will get into the afternoon, and I'll either have some admin work to do, or like if I'm able to keep writing, I will. So my wife is the one who sets my schedule. She says, hey man, here's what you're gonna need to do today, so you can just go ahead and write all day. And I'm like, yes. Or she says, hey, here's this, we have to do some admin today, we have to do this. And then another thing I recently started doing was office hours. So because what I focus on in the company is helping set up outlines, storyline, plot. I work with getting the artwork going, and like getting corrections from the authors and stuff. And there's definitely crossover there between what my wife and I do. Basically, in that case, like artists and stuff, it's typically whoever gets to it first. And then, she's a very hard worker. So, she's on top of stuff, man. And then mostly what I'm doing is I'm working with authors and narrators. And what Danielle usually does is focus on marketing and basically the legal side of things. So if people need contracts, if people need, if they want to get in contact with a certain narrator that we don't have contact with already, if we want to do other stuff like that. So Danielle is the actual making stuff sell side of Mountaindale, and I like to think that I am the making stuff, making the creatives create. So yeah, so I call myself a COO, which is something I hope to replace myself in soon. But yeah, man, and then social media and all that other stuff. Everything like that, because I do have my own fan base, and they're the best people, and they're very friendly, and we talk a lot. And so what I had to do is I typically will set aside time to answer stuff on Facebook and Patreon and places like that where fans want to interact. And I try to do that every day if I can, or at least every workday.
Do you ever find that difficult to restrict, or are you quite good at saying this is my bubble? I'm
getting better at that. I recently imposed a 12-hour maximum workday for myself and my wife, because we were sitting up there in the 60 to 80 hour range every week, and it was getting to be too much, and that's why we're expanding our infrastructure and hiring on some people going into next year. So yeah.
See, it sounds like a lot of your day is fairly routine, which must be quite conducive to the creative side. Do you, because I'm always curious about this, do you have any particular sort of morning routine, or is it a case of just get up and get into the work sort of as and when?
So I try to get up and work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I have a very routine thing at the gym. And I gotta say with Andres here, I am definitely cranking that up to 11. I'm very sore because it is a Monday, and that means arms, shoulders, and back. So then, when you're working out with someone and you're exercising with someone, you're like, yeah, I'll throw in an extra 20 pounds on that, but well, yeah, no worries. Yeah, what do you mean? What do you mean? 2 more? Sure, I can do 2 more. Let's do this. And then suddenly you're there for an hour and you're walking out and trying to hold the cup, but you got to use both hands like this.
And they're shaking, and it's
exactly. And yeah, he wasn't trying to be impressive. He's just impressive, and I'm just trying to match that. So, but then, yeah, I mean, and then usually I get right to work. I try to be going. It used to be 6, now it's about 8 that I'm starting my writing. And then I usually work until about 5. Go home and spend some time with my kid. Then when she goes to bed, if there's admin work to do or if there's things to do in the evening, try to get those done in a timely manner, and then spend time with my lovely wife. So yeah, and that's Monday through Friday, and now Saturday we do family day. Take the day off entirely because there's always more work to do. But dang it, we need to spend time with the kid, right?
It sounds like you've got a really good balance there. It must be something that's always quite tough to achieve.
It took about a year. It took about a year to get into a solid rhythm. And it's in author time, that's, it's a combination of forever and no time at all. So, yeah, I guess it's an exhausting blur, but every day seems to last 2 days, So.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah, I know that feeling. So what, let me try that again. Where are you looking to take Mountaindale Press? Obviously, you've got a handful of authors out from
worldwide,
working and doing some stuff. Worldwide. Yeah, what's next for Dakota and Mountaindale Press?
So right now we're focused on LitRPG and game titles. And my hope is eventually that we can get to a point where we're not just a medium to large fish in a small pond, right? My hope is that someday we actually become the pond, right? Where someone says, hey, I want to read a great LitRPG game book. Where do I go? Anything by Mountaindale Press, right? Like you just go out there, you find where the pond is, and then that's where you pull fish out, right? And that's kind of my hope, like just that we can become large enough and maintain a sterling enough reputation that everyone wants to work with us, and everyone who wants to read knows that we have awesome material. And that's my hope. It's I'd say a medium length goal, because the long-term goal is expanding and being a bigger publishing house doing multiple genres, but at the time it's not feasible. So yeah,
it's a big goal. I wish you the best with it. Now we're going to be jumping into our patron segment. So we've got some questions here from some of our patrons over at patreon.com/greatwritershare. And I'll just jump straight into these and then give us your best answers. So from Ian J. Middleton, he asks, who is your favorite author and why?
My favorite author. So this is a tough one. So I really like Margaret Weiss, and the Dragonlance, right? I really like, oh man. So probably though Piers Anthony would have to be my go-to guy. Like, so it's, yeah, just his humor just gets me, man. It's like he's a main line to my funny bone. He's like he's where I really got into loving puns, and that was the Xanth series, if you've ever read that. He's got just a ton of books. He's got like 50 books in that series, and they're all over the place. Like it's not like a contiguous series. It's kind of got a timeline, but yeah, man, like just everything can be a pun, and it's amazing. And that's really where I fell in love with the dad jokes and the puns is there, and that's translated so much into my own work that I can't say that he's not my favorite author, you know. So yeah, just gonna leave it there, you know.
Nice.
I mean, Brandon Sanderson is amazing, of course, you know, like all these authors that we've all heard of are amazing, of course they are, but the person who has had the most impact, and like I always go back to, is Piers Anthony. So
definitely have to check out some of his work. Jen Mitchell asks, what has been your biggest struggle and also your most pleasant surprise as you've worked to create Mountaindale Press?
Biggest struggle. That's a tough one. So biggest struggle has always been making sure that I am having a good work-life balance, right? So making sure that I'm not, because I'm a very focused person, I would say. Like when I'm working, I'm working, right? And it's hard for me to jump tracks. I'm very single track mind. So you know, I've got 10 books out in just over 2 years, and they're all chunky, like 100,000, 120,000 word books. And you know, it's a lot of people are like, man, why the crazy fast pace? I'm like, that's my day job, man. That's what I do for a living. Like, you know, 8 to 10 hours a day of writing, I'll do that, you know. But realizing that, you know, the books are doing well, and I can slow down a little bit and spend some time with my kids, spend some time with my wife, take some time to, like, I don't know, find a hobby, I guess. So I think it's been both my greatest struggle and a very pleasant surprise, is that, yeah, the work is still there, but I can put it off a little bit, and, you know, a day or two extra for a book to come out is not a long time at all. I mean, look at traditional publishers; they put out a book a year from one author, you know. And if I'm keeping up my same pace, but like 2-3 days extra, that's okay. So pleasant surprise.
It does definitely feel huge in the beginning, that sort of extra couple of days. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
Harley Christensen asks, what would your profession be if you weren't a writer?
Oh, I have a degree in computer programming, so computer science. So I was working at a tool company. I helped to design and run the front end, middle tier, and back end of their online system. So I did a lot of database programming. I also did a lot of like website programming, JavaScript, HTML. So kind of wore many hats. I was a 3-person team for a, you know, multi-million-dollar company. So it was long days. But yeah, before that I was in the military, and I have a lot of experience in a lot of different jobs. So, but profession would have been programmer for sure.
Has much of that transferred into the writing? Have you found that useful? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because, you know, like everyone can play games. How many people can like program and design them? I create everything in spreadsheet style, where I could hand it over. Hopefully, I mean, the hope is that I could hand it over to a game developing company and just say, here you go, turn that into a game, and it would take like a month. You know, like that's the hope. Obviously, there'd be more to it, but yeah, I mean, so having that really clear system that I can use and I can follow, but to everyone else looks like gibberish. You know, spreadsheets for days. You know, that has been very helpful in maintaining consistency in my world, and because people notice if you're not consistent. So.
Yes, definitely. Another one from Harley, which is, what is your top productivity tip or the go-to habit that keeps you on track?
Sure. So for me, I mean, everyone is going to find something different that works for them. But my go-to tip is be careful with the music you listen to, because if you're listening to music while writing, a lot of the time you'll look up and you'll see that some of the words from the lyrics have popped into your book. And you're like, oh, oops. So what I do? No, really?
No. Well, to be fair, I don't listen to lyrics.
Oh, same. And
Yeah.
so my productivity tip is if you're listening to music, find something that you can listen to. Like what I listen to is it's called brain food, but it's like trance or video game music. So it's designed for maximum focus and minimal distraction. So no English words in there, nothing that I can recognize. So everything is just sounds and kind of blocking out other things. Some people, some people though need to do something like go to a coffee shop so that they don't get lost in their own head, right? And sometimes I'm feeling that too. Like if I sit in a quiet room or if I'm sitting and listening to music, I will find myself just kind of expanding the world in my head and not putting it on paper.
Mhm.
And if you're here and you have to block people out and focus on what you're doing, that can be beneficial too. So it's kind of a yeah.
Yeah.
There's advice in there somewhere.
Yep. Have you ever experimented with binaural frequency music?
I have, yes. I just get tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for people listening, binaural frequency music is basically it just plays between the two channels of your ears to kind of, it's almost trip you out, isn't it? And make sure that you're not sort of just settling into a bit of a sleep. It just keeps your brain active because it's making it work harder. But it's definitely something I played with when I was in my old job, but not something I use now. I'm similar to you. I'll just listen to sort of very not orchestral. I listen to a lot of soundtrack stuff from films
Sure.
and things that are quite atmospheric. So that's all the Patreon questions we've got for this week. We're going to jump now into the quick fire round, which is just 10 questions I'm going to blast at you and try and answer them as quickly as possible. None of them are too heavy, I shouldn't think. So hopefully we'll see how you come out on the other side. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Cool. Question 1, World of Warcraft or Elder Scrolls?
Elder Scrolls.
How many pens are currently stuck down the side of your couch?
0.
What's your preferred liquid to fill a balloon?
Water.
What's your class of choice?
Class of choice.
Yes.
Ritualist.
Give us your best pun.
Oh man. All right. So you're gonna have to play along with this one. So someone here is possessed by an owl.
Who?
Aha! We found him.
If you could be any one of your characters, who would it be?
It would definitely be my main character Joe, because it's definitely a self-insert. I would, if I had the option to go and play with magic, I would definitely go and tinker with magic and sip coffee and laugh maniacally as my creations like made things happen. You know, that's how I felt as a programmer. Honestly, I was basically a wizard with a keyboard, and then I hit a button and things would happen.
I need to reread the Ritualist now with you in mind instead. How do you spell omelette?
Omelette? OMLETE.
What was the last film? What was the last film to make you cry?
To make me cry?
Yep.
Oh, wow, that's a tough one because I don't really watch movies, so it'd probably be Starship Troopers.
Okay. What one fantasy realm would you love to visit?
Oh, most of them would suck to visit, honestly. Most of them are horrifying. Fantasy realm. Oh, that's. I mean, I write what I would love to be in, man. So I mean, I would definitely go to my own world. If not that, I would go to Xanth, because everything is a pun, and if you understand pun-based humor, you can survive pretty well. So, so I feel like I would survive really well.
Nice. And final question: what is your favorite instrument?
Probably violin. Yes.
Cool.
I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful sound. So,
it is. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Cool. That was the quick fire round. How did you find it?
Oh, it was good. Sorry, I wasn't as quick as I could fire, but
we've had slow.
I use the words with my hands. So
no, that's cool. But I would just before we sign off, just where can listeners find out more about yourself and your work?
Awesome. So you can either find me at facebook.com/The Divine Dungeon, and that's just my author page. You can, if you go there, I'll always try and message back as quickly as I can. If you message me, you can post stuff. Otherwise, you can find me at patreon.com/Dakota KROUT, and you get to see early content there. And of course, Amazon, I think it's just amazon.com/Dakota KROUT, I think is my author page there. So depending on what you're looking for, if you're just looking for a product, Amazon probably. If you're looking to talk to me, probably facebook.com/The Divine Dungeon. The Divine Dungeon. Sorry, I should slow that down when I'm saying it.
That's all right. We'll pop it all in the show notes for people.
Sure. And if you just really want to see stuff ahead of time, then patreon.com/Dakota KROUT. And
fantastic.
Otherwise, just talk to Dan. He'll bring you up. Yeah.
I will. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate having you on the show.
Absolutely, man. And thank you for bringing me on, because this is awesome. So thank you.
No worries. Appreciate it. And thank you very much, everyone, for listening. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Great Writers Share podcast. Next week, we'll be talking to dark fiction author Catherine Hudson. Don't forget that you can get early access to every episode of the Great Writers Share podcast and the chance to ask upcoming guests any of your questions just by becoming a patron of the show. All you need to do is visit www.patreon.com/Great Writers Share and support the show for as little as $1 a month. One more time, that's www.patreon.com/Great Writers Share. Until next time.